You don't deserve a penny of this money. That was the first thing my father said at the will reading. His voice was sharp, cutting through the heavy silence of the lawyer's office like glass breaking on tile. My mother sat beside him. Lips pressed thin, eyes gleaming not with grief for my uncle's death, but with hunger. I sat frozen, staring at the two people who had once been everything to me. The same people who walked away from me when I was just 10 years old, and now? They were back, demanding $20 million. My name is Claire Bennett. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me, because I need you to hear this story. Have you ever been treated like a stranger in your own family? The will was supposed to be a quiet affair, attended by just me, my uncle's lawyer, and a handful of distant relatives. But when my parents walked in, uninvited, my stomach dropped like I'd swallowed stone. Claire, my dad said with mock warmth. We're still your family. My lawyer glanced at me. He already knew the history. He knew what they had done to me, what they had traded me for. And now, watching them sit across the mahogany table, claiming their place as if they hadn't abandoned me, I felt the past clawing back. I remembered the day they left me behind. The day they told me I wasn't their problem anymore. The day a 10-year-old girl stopped being a daughter and became a burden, and now, after all those years, after my uncle's kindness saved me from ruin, they had returned, not to say sorry. Not to ask forgiveness, but to sue me for everything he left behind. And in that moment, as my father's eyes burned into mine, I felt it, the spark of something that had been buried deep all these years, not just pain. Not just betrayal, but fire, because if they wanted war, I was finally ready to give it to them. The lawyer cleared his throat, trying to keep the atmosphere professional. Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, this proceeding is private. You were not listed in the invitation, but my father slammed his palm against the polished table. We have every right to be here. She's our daughter. Daughter. The word dripped from his tongue like poison. I almost laughed. Where were they when I turned 12 and cried myself to sleep because no one came to my school recital? Where were they when I had to wash dishes in a diner at 15 just to buy shoes? Where were they when I begged for help, and they told me, coldly, cruelly, that I wasn't theirs anymore? My Uncle Robert was there. He became my anchor, my protector, the only adult who saw me as more than a mistake. And now he was gone, but even in death, he had taken care of me. He left me his estate, his mansion by the sea, and his fortune. He left me a future, and that was the future my parents wanted to steal. Claire doesn't have the capacity to manage $20 million. My mother spoke up finally, her voice smooth, rehearsed, dripping with fake concern. We should be the trustees. For her own good. The room tilted. I clenched my fists under the table. Trustees? These were the same people who sold me for cash. My lawyer leaned back calmly. Interesting claim, he said, adjusting his glasses. Because Mr. Robert Bennett left behind more than just money. He left instructions. Recordings. My father's face twitched. He wasn't expecting that, and in that instant, I understood, this wasn't just about inheritance. It was about power. Control. Ownership. For years, they had erased me. Now, they wanted to rewrite me, but not this time. I lifted my eyes, locking on my father's. Go ahead, I whispered to my lawyer. Play it. The sound of a button clicked. And as the speaker crackled to life, the first words of my uncle's recorded voice filled the room like thunder. If you're hearing this, it means Robert Bennett is dead. And if they are here, the pause was heavy. My parents froze. Then, I need the truth told. I could feel my heart pounding against my ribs. My uncle's voice was back, reaching through death, cutting into the lies, and I knew, this was only the beginning. The room went still, the air thick with something more powerful than grief. Truth. My uncle's voice carried weight, every syllable deliberate, echoing from beyond the grave. Claire was never abandoned by me. She was abandoned by you. My father's jaw tightened. My mother's hands twitched in her lap. When she was 10, you sold her to strangers for $13,000. I know, because I was the one who tracked her down after they tossed her aside like trash. The words pierced the silence, each one a blade. My chest burned, and yet I felt a strange release. Finally, someone was saying it out loud. Finally, the world would know. My father barked out a laugh, fake, brittle. That's a lie. He's manipulating the memory of a child. But my uncle's voice continued, unwavering. You don't get to erase what you did. You don't get to crawl back when you smell money. This fortune is not yours. It belongs to her. Every cent. The tape clicked off, and for the first time, my parents didn't speak. They sat there, cornered, their faces cracking under the weight of what had just been exposed. I looked at them, the people who gave me life but stole my childhood, and I realized something: they weren't ashamed. Not really. They were calculating, because shame dies quickly in people like them. But greed? Greed survives anything. My lawyer broke the silence. As you can hear, Mr. Bennett anticipated this exact situation. This recording, along with signed affidavits and financial records, proves the history of abandonment and exploitation. He slid a folder across the table. The sound of paper against wood was louder than thunder. My mother finally spoke, her voice sharp. None of this changes the fact that we are her legal parents. Blood counts for something in court. I leaned forward, my voice steady, almost too calm. Blood? I whispered. You're the ones who sold mine. For a second, the mask slipped. My father's face flushed red, his nostrils flared. And in that moment, I knew, they weren't going to back down. No, they were going to fight. They were going to drag me through every courtroom, every headline, every whisper in town. Until they either got the money or broke me. But they'd underestimated one thing: I wasn't 10 years old anymore, and this time, I wasn't alone. The lawsuit hit me like a storm. Within a week, I was served with papers, petition for custodial rights over estate. In other words, my parents, the same people who once signed me away for $13,000, were demanding custody of me again. Not because they wanted a daughter, but because they wanted $20 million. My hands shook as I read the words, the legal jargon sharp and cold. But beneath the panic, there was something else boiling inside me: rage. They had stolen my childhood. And now, they were trying to steal my future. I sat in the courtroom weeks later, dressed in black, staring across the aisle at them. My father wore a tailored suit he couldn't possibly afford. My mother's smile was painted on like cheap makeup, her eyes darting nervously to the reporters lining the benches, because this wasn't just a lawsuit anymore. It was a spectacle. The media loved it. Estranged parents sue daughter over $20 million inheritance. I was no longer just Claire Bennett. I was headlines, gossip, whispers at coffee shops, but I refused to be their victim again. When the judge called the case, my lawyer rose, calm as ever. Your Honor, this is not about guardianship or concern for Ms. Bennett. This is about greed, plain and simple. We have records, testimonies, and recordings proving the petitioners abandoned Claire at 10 years old. They relinquished her care, legally and financially. They cannot now pretend to be parents. My father stood, his voice booming. Your Honor, we made mistakes, but mistakes don't erase blood. She's our daughter. We deserve a role in her life, and in what belongs to this family. Family. The word was venom. I leaned toward the microphone, my voice steady but sharp enough to cut glass. They didn't make a mistake. They sold me. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Cameras clicked like gunfire. I didn't stop. When I was 10, they traded me for cash. My uncle saved me. He raised me. He gave me everything they took away. And now, they're here, not because they want me, but because they want his money. My mother's face went pale. My father clenched his fists, whispering something vicious under his breath. The judge banged her gavel for order, but the damage was done. The truth was out. Still, I knew the battle wasn't over, because people like my parents don't stop when they're cornered. They strike harder, and as I walked out of that courtroom, the flash of cameras blinding me, I could feel it. This was only round one. They weren't just suing me for money. They were going to try to destroy me, but this time, I wasn't the one on trial. They were asterisk. They didn't come at me with love. They came at me with knives wrapped in paperwork. Every day after that first hearing, another letter arrived. Subpoenas. Motions. Accusation. They hired a high-profile attorney who smiled like a shark, feeding the press with carefully crafted lies. Claire is unstable. Claire cannot handle $20 million. Claire was never abandoned, she ran away. I read those words at midnight in my uncle's study, the house silent around me, the ocean whispering outside. Each sentence felt like a blade twisting deeper. They weren't just trying to take the money. They were trying to rewrite history, and for a moment, I almost broke, because what happens when the people who made you, the people who were supposed to love you first, stand up in court and call you a liar? But then I remembered Uncle Robert's voice. If they show up, don't let them take you down. Fight, Claire. You're stronger than they'll ever know. So I fought. We dug deeper. My lawyer unearthed old bank records, scraps of evidence hidden for years. And then came the witness I never expected, the neighbor from the street where I grew up. She was older now, hair silver, eyes tired, but when she walked into that courtroom, I felt the ground shift. I remember, she said, her voice trembling, but steady. I saw them put Claire into a stranger's car. I asked where she was going, and her father told me. She's not ours anymore. The courtroom erupted. Gasps, whispers, reporters scribbling furiously. My mother's hand shot to her mouth. My father went rigid, jaw clenched so hard I thought his teeth would crack, and me, for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something powerful bloom inside me. Not just anger. Not just grief, vindication, because the truth wasn't just mine anymore. Someone else had seen it. Someone else had spoken it, but even as the tide turned, I caught the look in my father's eyes, dark, furious, unrelenting, and I knew this wasn't the end. This was the part where they got desperate, and desperation is dangerous. Desperation has a smell. It's sharp, metallic, like blood in the water, and that's exactly what followed me after the neighbor's testimony, the scent of my parents losing control. The next morning, I found a message taped to my front gate, the letter scrawled in black marker, "Drop the case or you'll regret it." No signature. No return address. Just the threat. My lawyer told me not to react, to let the courts handle it. But how do you ignore the ghosts of the people who abandoned you, now trying to haunt you all over again? And it wasn't just the notes, they dug through my past, dragging every scar into the light. Old photos of me in foster care, stories twisted into headlines, troubled heiress unfit to handle $20 million fortune. Every time I opened my phone, there it was, my name, plastered across the news. My pain turned into a spectacle, but the worst came when my father cornered me outside the courthouse. He stepped close, his breath hot, his voice low enough so the cameras wouldn't catch it. "You think you've won because of some old woman's memory? You're nothing without us. We made you. And we can destroy you." For a second, I was 10 again. Small. Powerless. Invisible. But then I remembered the tape. The neighbor's words. The truth finally clawing its way into daylight, and I straightened my back. "You didn't make me," I whispered. "You sold me." For the first time, he flinched. He tried to cover it with a smirk, but I saw it, the crack in the armor. The weakness beneath the fury. That night, I sat in my uncle's mansion, staring at the ocean. The waves crashed against the rocks like a drumbeat, steady, endless, and I realized something. This wasn't just about money anymore. It wasn't even just about justice. It was about survival, because people who abandon you will always try to come back, not for love, but for what you've built without them. And if I wanted to end this war, I couldn't just win in court. I had to expose them so deeply, so publicly, that they could never crawl back again, ever. The courtroom was full that morning. Reporters jammed into the benches, cameras flashing outside like lightning. My parents came in smiling, wide, fake, rehearsed smiles. They thought they still had a chance, but I had something they didn't know about. Something Uncle Robert had hidden away for years. When my lawyer stood, he didn't waste words. "Your Honor, the petitioners claim they never abandoned their daughter, that they acted in her best interests. Today, we submit new evidence." He pressed play. The room filled with sound, not my uncle's voice this time, but my father's. Recording, his voice, younger, colder, meaner. 13,000. Cash. She's yours. Don't bring her back. The words echoed like a gunshot. My stomach twisted, but I didn't look away. I wanted every single person in that room to hear the truth. The gasps tore through the crowd. The judge's eyes widened. My mother buried her face in her hands. My father froze, caught, exposed, stripped bare, and then came the second voice, the man he sold me to. "What if the girl asks about her parents? My father, tell her whatever you want. She's not my problem anymore. The sound clicked off. Silence roared louder than any scream. I felt the tears burn behind my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I lifted my chin instead, meeting the judge's gaze. This is who they are. They didn't just abandon me. They sold me. The judge's gavel slammed once, sharp and final. Enough. This court has heard sufficient evidence. My parents tried to recover, tried to spin, but it was useless. The truth was carved into the walls now, undeniable, unshakable. My father stood, red-faced, shouting. That recording is fake. It's manipulated. But his voice cracked. He sounded small, desperate, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one who looked weak in front of them. As the bailiff moved closer, my mother grabbed my father's arm, hissing something frantic. Their performance was over. Their mask shattered. I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel fear. I felt power, because after a lifetime of being silenced, my voice had finally been louder than theirs, and tomorrow, the judge would give the verdict. One way or another, this war was ending. The courtroom was quieter than a church the morning the verdict came. I sat at the plaintiff's table, hands clasped tight, heart pounding like a drum. My parents were across from me, their lawyer whispering frantically, faces pale and drained of all the arrogance they carried when this began. The judge adjusted her glasses, eyes sharp as steel. This court has reviewed the evidence. The petitioners claim parental rights. But the recordings, testimonies, and records paint a different picture, a story of abandonment, exploitation, and deliberate harm. My mother trembled. My father stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, refusing to blink. The judge's voice was steady, final. The estate belongs to Claire Bennett. Full and unchallenged. The petition is denied. Furthermore, this court recommends criminal investigation into the actions of the petitioners. Gasps rippled through the room. Reporters scribbled, cameras flashed, voices whispered, but all I heard was silence. A silence that felt like freedom. My parents stood, shouting, begging, unraveling in front of everyone. We're her family. We deserve something. We gave her life. The bailiff stepped forward, steady, unshaken. But I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I just looked at them, really looked at them, and for the first time, I felt nothing. No fear. No longing. No ache for what could have been, because the truth was clear. I was never theirs to begin with. Uncle Robert had given me love when they gave me away. And now, even in death, he'd given me something more powerful than money. He gave me my voice. My freedom. My justice. As I walked out of that courthouse, the sunlight broke across the steps, warm against my face. Reporters shouted questions, microphones thrust toward me, but I didn't stop. I just whispered to myself, steady, certain. Final, they sold me once. They'll never own me again, and with that, the story closed.